Okay, well, I'm Dave, and this is your Best Dual Sport Bikes channel, and I'm out here in the middle of nowhere one more time because nobody can bug me here. The phone doesn't work, the internet doesn't work, and I can just get stuff done, and I can ride and test. And this is where a lot of this stuff on this 524 has been developed. It's been a while coming to figure all these things out, but if you are thinking about buying a 24, 500, or 25, because they're the same, 26 I don't know, because Euro 6 emissions kick in at that point. I don't know if things are going to have to radically change in 2026 or not. I have a semi fear that they're going to come with a catalytic converter and the exhaust, but we'll see. Okay, so this will apply though to 24 and 25. You might want to know all this stuff before you buy it. Let's rock. So probably the number one complaint is it flames out, it stalls, it runs hot. You can tell there's a lot of power in there, but it sure feels stifled up. I just want to fix that. And I hear all these things, you have to buy these fancy pipes and you have to buy these expensive ECUs and things about the intake tract, what's true and what's not. Well, I can sort all that out for you for under 600 bucks. I can give you 4 maps. I can give you traction control. I can give you 2 power maps. I can fix all your fueling. I can add 20 horsepower to your bike up on top. All that, and that's actually more than 6 because you'd have to get a map switch here. From the KTM race bike, we have them also. But yes, after we will fix your ECU for you. We will fix the exhaust. We will fix the intake for you. That stuff is under 600 bucks. But then you have the price of the map switch, you know, 125 to 150, but utilizing that, and it plugs in right underneath your headlight now on 24 models only, but all of the 24 models, whether it's the gas ones or the Husky ones or these KTM ones, 350s, 450s, and 500s. And after we fix your ECU, yes, you can use a switch, you can have your 2 power maps, and you can have your traction control enabled. So that's pretty neat, the fact that you can do all of that stuff and get all of that power for under 750 bucks. That is spectacular. Before we get into that specifically though, let me show you things that will make your life nicer even if you didn't want to add power to the bike. So one of the things that's important to do, but it only fits the KTMs, the trail bikes, and the XCW 2-strokes, is put these handlebar rubbers that we make in here stock. This is a hard mount, so this part of the clamp bolts to your top triple clamp solid, so you feel all the vibration, all the shocks through the bars. Now with these, you know, proprietary rubber kind of things we've made for $49.95, what a major difference. Modified bike or stock bike, number one thing to do. Okay, right here in this frame rail lies your thermostat tube. This is your stock tube. Your thermostat's inside of here. You can use this tube, which is out of the motocross bike, which is a straight through tube, no thermostat. If you do that, what does it do? Lowers the temperature of your bike quite a bit, which is big on these 500s or 350s or any of the bikes where they are stifled up. Very easy to change. It threads out with a 30mm socket, or you could actually grab it with pliers most likely. There's an O-ring on the top. This one will thread in. Lower the temperature of your bike by approximately 20 degrees. You know, for less than 25 bucks, no brainer. Another thing well worth it is just this larger capacity fuel filter instead of the stock dinky one, which is 1/2 of your quick disconnect. I don't use quick disconnects anymore. We just call this a clamp-on filter. That way, there's no chance of the one side of your quick disconnect, the plastic side, breaking, or the plunger getting stuck and it messing with fuel flow. This is a huge stainless steel screen in it, 7 times larger than the stock one, and it won't get clogged out there in the middle of nowhere. This is a direct clamp-on unit. And this goes up to the fuel tank. I'll show you that a little bit later. Also, you can see this different fuel rail here. It's this here. It's metal. It's a much better straight shot of fuel than the stock plastic one. They've been known to break lately, cracking here at the neck. And you can tell that much better shot of fuel instead of this hose kink aspect on this one that we have got, which will help a bit with the flame mounts and snappier acceleration, and it won't break. And then there's little things like this flexible jet idle adjustment screw, which you can get to off to the side instead of the stock one that's really hard to do. But now let's get to the real stuff, the juice. So now let's get down to the good stuff, the juice. The problem with the juice is you have to commit to doing 3 things. If you just do one, it may or may not work out too well for you. I don't just do one thing, and I will explain to you why. There's 2 aspects to these things being stifled up. There's the EPA, which we know that what that is. That's noise. So when these bikes are really quiet, the end cap being all plugged up to make it quiet, that's EPA for passing a drive-by sound test. When you have reed valve assembly, which I'll show you in the intake track, the only bike that has that, that's to stifle intake noise. That's EPA stuff to pass a drive-by sound test. Then you have the leanness of the bike. You have your O2 sensors and your carbon canister setups here on the side to keep the exhaust gas fumes out of the air. That's air resources board stuff. It's designed around CARB, the California stuff, but it is now a 50-state bike, so we all get the same enjoyment. So you have 2 agencies that they had to keep happy. Just keep that in mind. And when you get mad that you got this bike and it's all stifled up and has issues, well, they did what they had to do to get you a fantastic bike. So what's the 3-step process? Well, first let's look at the exhaust. So the end cap on the stock muffler is the only restriction. This is your stock end cap that came on it. You have these perforated screens here with these dinky little holes in it. This is the only way for the exhaust, all that heat and all that pressure to get out. And it can't get out, so it backs up through the engine. It runs really hot. The fan's on all the time. The pressure can't get out when you crack the gas, which is one of the reasons that it likes to flame out and die, because the pressure can't get out. Also, you know, this is welded up on this side. The perforated core on the inside fits real tight to this thing, so the pressure has to sneak around here, get into this spark arrestor element here. This is the spark arrestor, by the way. There is a perforated cone inside these stock ones. That's just a sound deadening device. It's not a bad thing to have. It keeps it under control. It is not your spark arrestor. I recommend that you don't take it out, or it will be very loud if you change the end cap. And then of course you have your restrictions here. You can see the difference in size. This is 1.5 ID straight through, but it does have a forestry approved spark arrestor screen on the inside of it. $160 for this end cap that we make. It's all you need, folks. You don't need a fancy muffler. But when you change this, the flow gets much better. The bike runs leaner. Just doing this could create you some issues. So here's your reeds. If you take the air filter off, you're gonna find this reed cage assembly from the 2-stroke motorcycle jammed in here all the way, and that creates less intake noise, but it also creates a huge disaster potential if one of these pedals breaks off. If it breaks off in a 2-stroke, it's no big deal. It just spits out the exhaust port. If it breaks off on this bike and you're going down the road and you're way out there and it happens to stick in between your intake valve or exhaust valve and valve seat, you've just bent your valves and wadded yourself up, and you might be sleeping out in the desert overnight, and you've just probably got yourself a $6,000 paperweight because it's probably out of warranty at that point. So it's not a great thing to leave these in there. Some people think it's a good idea. I think they're absolute idiots. They go, well, it has better bottom end. Well, would you rather have better bottom end or a 30-mile walk home? And keep in mind that this is your other big stifler for the power. So this is keeping all your air from going in there. So you've just limited you know, 20% of air going in. The exhaust is limited 20% air going out. Once we get the right air and fuel to it, you can understand how you can easily get another 20% power. So at this point, a big open rectangle hole does not do very well for increased intake air velocity at lower throttle openings. So we make this simple little tube. It's just spun aluminum, and it reshapes it like any other racing intake, where it's a long slender hole approximately the same size as your throttle body, and it just slips in there and catches underneath, and now you have a properly shaped intake. Great, that was simple. Now we've radically increased the air going into the motor, and if you just did that, if I scared you with the reed things and you left the exhaust stock and you left your ECU stock and you just did the reeds, it's going to run noticeably leaner. So your chances of flaming out has probably gone up. It's going to run leaner past half throttle or 6,000 RPMs when it goes to what we call open loop, where your O2 sensor isn't giving it feedback, and then you're going to be in a dangerously lean zone. So that's where it's like you've got to commit to all three things. You just do the intake, you're cruising for a bruising. If you leave it, you're cruising for a bruising potentially. If you just do the exhaust, you really opened up airflow there as well. That leans the bike out. Same thing as with the intake. It's not going to necessarily be better. It's probably going to be worse because it's going to be running leaner. So you've done your intake, you've done your exhaust. Now all we have to do is match up the correct air fuel to it and the ignition timing, and that's where you get your big power gains. Starts easier, idles easier, runs much cooler. It's not flaming out. It pulls strong and smooth everywhere, and then it hauls butt if you want it to. At that point, again, you can also add your map switch to it. Because we install the two maps in here and we enable traction control in each map. So now you kind of understand it. The ECU is under here. You just clip it out. Clip the new one in. And it's time to rock and roll. Please keep in mind you can't just do the ECU because it would be far too rich if you didn't let the air get into it and the air get out of it. You have to do both. You can't even just choose one of those and do the ECU because you have to set the air fuel to something for it to be correct. It is designed for an open exhaust or an open intake. And yes, you could use, if it's an FMF 4.1, you know, Akrapovic or something, that's all open exhaust. That's what we classify as that. Some people just like to take the reeds out. They think the intake tube's silly. That's fine, that's still open intake. You would lose some bottom end throttle response, but you would save some money. And then some people want to use the intake off of a 450 XCW because that's open, it doesn't have the reeds in it. A lot harder to change, more money, and honestly runs a little bit better with the tube because you have a little bit longer length. But those are all things to keep in mind. What's it sound like? More like a motorcycle, less like a sewing machine. Now you're going, well, how's the power when you're riding it? Well, I did this start yesterday in 4th gear out here with my brand new Shinko 525 cheater tire, which is soft and gummy and gets ultimate traction. In fact, it was brand new yesterday. This is what it looks like now after this one start. But this was a start on slight uphill in 4th gear. If you can pull that with this tire, you've got some juice. Gonna go in 3rd? Of course, but the wheel just keeps coming up and it's not that fun to try to calm it down. And now you're going, neat. I don't need all that power. I just don't want the flame outs. I want to be able to trail around. I don't want to stall. I want it smooth and controllable and all that stuff. How does that work? Cool. Let's suit up and let's go tool around in second and third gear and fourth gear in this tight stuff, and I'll show you.